Hello, welcome back to Mike Reads the World. It's always interesting, isn't it, when you have to pick a book by an author to read? It's like, do I start with their greatest work, their final work that everyone thinks is the best? Because it's like, if I really like it, where do I go from there? But also, I want to read something by them that is going to be worth my time and that I'm going to really like, right? It's always a dilemma I have when choosing books for authors in this Reading the World project, where I try to read a book by an author from every country. And Magda Szabo was my choice for Hungary a while back. I read this, and it was her final work. Now, 30 years before that book, she wrote The Fawn. And this is the fifth book of hers that NYRB Classics has published, and this is the most recent. I saw it at the bookstore, picked it up, and there was something about the back and flipping through it a little bit that I got this sense like this is a different book from the door, a very different book written long before, but I got the sense that it was going to contain an element of the door that I've never quite experienced in any other author or work of literature. And after reading this one, I can say that Magda Szabo's writing really, for me, is characterized by two things that makes it quite unique. One is extremely frustrating characters that you want to know more about, but the frustrating part about them is that they never let you really get to understand them or their motives, and you might think you've come to a conclusion, but you're always left in a little bit of doubt. And then the second thing, and it's really the combination of these two things that I think makes Magda Szabo's style unique to me from what I've all read in my life. The second is these uncomfortable scenarios. They're mundane, typical scenarios like a dinner party or something that she is able to make so unsettling and uncomfortable that it practically verges on psychological horror. And it's a strange way to say it, but that's the best way I can describe it. So these frustrating characters existing in these really uncomfortable scenarios that shouldn't be as uncomfortable as they are. And I talk a little bit about that in my review on The Door. So if you're interested in that, I will link it in the description that I did a long time ago. Well, not that long ago, but for me it feels like a long time ago. So, The Fawn. The Fawn. This book is very hard to talk about. It's because it's in stream of consciousness. It opens up in second person. The second paragraph jarringly goes, "You is talking to you." Now, you are a character in the book, but the character that you are and the circumstance in which she is talking to you and telling you her jumbled memories and feelings and, stream of consciousness thoughts will not be very clear to you until much later in the book. So I cannot spoil that in good consciousness. Even though I've been caring less and less about spoilers, a lot of the fun of this book, or I shouldn't say fun, but the intriguing part about this book is discovering that, those two things. Now, one thing that helps is there is a dramatis personae or persona, I don't know how you pronounce that, but in the beginning of this book, as well as a guy. So anytime you're confused about characters being revealed out of order, which happens a lot, you can refer to this, and it's thematically very in tune with the book, because the narrator, Esther, instead of being narrated by the character, the author herself in The Door, her last book, Magda Szabo chooses to narrate it from the perspective of the very frustrating character, which is Esther, who is a famous actress, again, talking to you, and it's pretty clear early on that you are like who she's talking to are her lover or perhaps husband. You're not really sure, but she's talking to someone who's like very close to her. So and has been intimate with her. She's a famous actress and reminiscing on all these things, and so that's, some very important symbolism in this book is going to be the characters that she has played as an actress, who she's going to reference, and three most important ones that come to mind are Joan of Arc from Shaw's St. Joan, and from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, Puck, as she is kind of a trickster character. So she is both a tragic character and a trickster. And the other character is Agamemnon's daughter from Gita. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but Agamemnon's daughter, who he sacrifices. The play is about her. She plays the daughter. So elements of both tragedy and sort of the trickster character in Esther's life. Esther, her frustrating nature comes from the fact that she, we get her direct thoughts, and her direct thoughts are ones that she takes delight in other people's suffering. She unintentionally harms people by her trickster nature, but she doesn't seem to really feel any remorse for this, and at times even takes delight in it. She is a pretty dark, for lack of a better word, character. Especially being in her head, this entire book is quite. It can be quite troubling, I'm not gonna. Sometimes I feel like I go a little bit too quick to pointing out these characters as maybe, I don't know, sociopathic or psychopathic, but in reality, these expresses kinds of thoughts that, if we're being honest, we all have these sort of thoughts at times, and more so when they are connected to sort of trauma in our past, which Esther, when she's very young, has... She grows up poor because her father dies young when she's young, and her mother has to support the family by giving music lessons. So we get this, it's not, is it imagery or is it like sound imagery? But this is one of the images, if we can call it that, or sounds of the book that has stayed with me the most, is this where she describes almost being tormented by the children that her mother is teaching piano to, because the children are just like butchering Chopin and Mozart and, these classic works, and the soundtrack to this book is basically badly played piano by children. And when she's young, Esther has some rich relatives, one of which gives her some badly fitting shoes, which do some permanent damage to her feet that she is really self-conscious of throughout the whole book. And this is obviously a powerful symbol, because multiple times throughout the book she references this pain and this sort of slight deformity on her foot, which it's not obvious to anyone, as she's wearing shoes and walking around, but it's kind of this barely hidden, I don't know if we call it a deformity. Yeah, just, it's something, but it's something that is a deep source of shame to her. So, powerful symbol there. And as she grows up, she admits to things, like her friend Gizi. She tutors one of her friends that lives in a tavern across from her house, and this neighborhood is called the Barrage, and fitting, because at one point in this story, World War II is going to happen, and the Germans will take over, then the Russians come in, and she watches all this happen with her typical detached, even kind of delighted viewing of the suffering that's going on around her. She has a few romantic interests that she has some very strange and detached and complicated feelings for, but the central conflict is with her childhood friend. I think it's Angela. Let me check the pronunciation again, because she is... I think it's Angela. Because, Angela, if I'm going by the pronunciation, but it looks like Angela to me in English, right? So, Anyway, this character she's from an upper class family, like a family that's straight up upper class, and Esther has this like hatred of her from the beginning of the story, and what she hates most about her is her goodness. And there is an early part of the book where she examines how goodness is not only something fake, but seems to be, it's almost implied that she views this as like as goodness is like a bourgeois thing. So there is a real social undertone to this book, and this conflict that's going to develop over the book between Esther and Angela. But it's, if I'm pronouncing that right, I'm gonna go with it. So if I'm pronouncing it wrong, Hungarians, please let me know. But Angela, she is really, and we're very distant from her for this whole thing. I mean, we only get to know Angela through Esther's thoughts. And it's one of those things like how much of this character that Esther is communicating to us is actually just Esther's kind of interpretation of things. And in a way, Angela is just as frustrating of a character as Esther by her effervescent nature, because Angela almost seems like she's a person that doesn't even or shouldn't even exist, but her life is just so much easier than Esther's, and there is this sort of for lack of a better word, resentment, although I really don't want to go the route, and I'm sure there's people who do this, of trying to compare these characters to like political movements within Hungary and seeing this as like a metaphor for that. Like maybe that is an interpretation, but I personally don't like I don't like attaching those sorts of symbols to characters in books if I can avoid it, because it's just it gets very confusing, and I feel like you lose a lot of the what you can learn about individuals and human nature just from these characters. Like them being possible and probable humans is enough. I feel like these characters really came to life for me in a way that I don't need to see them as symbols for anything, even if that is possibly a legitimate way to interpret the book. That's just me. But even so, it's like social class as individuals, and the privileges that you grow up with and the advantages that you grow up with. We can't pretend these aren't real things. There is real and valid resentment in people, in that have these sorts of differences. So I think this book is a really uncomfortable and excellent exploration of that. And in my opinion, it's really tough to say because both of these books were excellent. Like, The Door is probably a greater work of literature if you're looking at it in some objective way, but I enjoyed reading The Fawn more. And but I'm equally excited to reread both of them at some point if I ever have the time, because I've got a lot more on my TBR, obviously. But at least I know for a fact that both The Fawn and The Door are going to be in my head for a long time, and I want to still read more from Magda Szabo. She really stands out as an author, even if it's like I don't finish her books and say, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing," but sometimes it's even more powerful when the characters of a book just stick in your head, and you keep getting recurring thoughts about the book or that character that you don't even really control. Like, for lack of a better word, it gets under your, or way to say it gets under your skin. I feel that she does, and probably due to those sort of two characteristics I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So yeah, I don't know what else I could say about The Fawn. I hope you're interested to read it. Stream of consciousness, it's challenging. There are points in the book, like, if there's anything that's going to put you off of it, it's that, you have the dramatist personae to guide you, but there's a lot of moments in the book where she'll talk about a character or an event and you'll be like, what? I don't, and then might be like looking through the chapter you just read to see if there was something else about it. But no, it's if you run into a moment like that and you're reasonably paying attention to the story, it's probably coming very soon. I had a lot of moments like that, and I was almost always, whoever her editor was, and the translator Len Ricks, who also did The Door, and I believe all the other books by Magda Szabo that NYRB Classics has published. He does an excellent job of like, and I'm sure this is Magda Szabo's style too, just very clear. And I think that's what I think the clear narration, even though it's in stream of consciousness, like it's the translation's good. That's all I'm going to say. Like just the fact that he was able to translate this is really amazing. And I think this is all I can say without spoiling much, is that I think that the translator could really relate to the character that Esther in this book is talking to, the you. And I can almost imagine the translator imagining himself as the you. And that's all I can really say about it without giving too much away. Yeah, so things do come together in the end. The moments where you might be confused are going to be resolved. Have faith, keep reading. It's a really, just like The Door, a really confusing, frustrating, intriguing book that's going to stay with you and get under your skin, probably. So if that's the kind of thing that you want to read, I definitely do. I'm going to read more of her. Then I recommend this book. Check out The Fawn, and let me know your thoughts on it. I feel like there's more I want to say, but I just some other day. Yeah, some other day I'll hopefully be able to talk more about Magda Szabo. So with that, have a great evening or day wherever you are, and we'll see you next time on Mike Reads the World as we continue poetry and the countries and all that good stuff. Take care.